Exact measurement in prophecy given to John, pinned on chart the prophetic periods of the last days. Beloved, by considering that the time of the end is very near, Christians nowadays must be cautious in accepting any doctrine that's deceiving, that will lead them far away from the spirit of truth. Today, the vast majority are attracted by fraudulent ministers and pastors with sugar-coated preaching. Most Bible preachers are moving away from what should be preached, which are not in line with the prophetic periods that we are living in right now. Most sermons nowadays are based on idealism, and often stereotyped sermons are presented on church pulpits and social media. And because of this, the coming close of individual probation will catch the entire brethren unaware, because of their procrastination. But the fact is that, in the last days, there are only two witnessing from the spirit of prophecy, required to establish the truth in line with the two messages of the gospel, referring to God's kingdom of grace, as proclaimed by the third angel's message, Revelation 14:9-12 from the west, and God's kingdom of glory, as proclaimed by the fourth angel's message, Revelation 18:1 from the east. This two gospel messages from two directions, is the exact fulfillment of the prophecy of Isaiah 59:19. For this reason, we therefore encourage the use of the oracles of God in the Bible, as testified by Peter in 1 Peter 4:11, in the preaching of the gospel. Let us learn from the mistake committed by the early Jewish priests and scribes. The mistake committed by the Jewish scribes of the Temple of Jerusalem, later called as the Church of God, Acts 20:28, by neglecting the oracles of God entrusted unto them. At the time of Christ's first advent, the priests and scribes of the holy city, to whom were entrusted the oracles of God, should have discerned the signs of the times, and proclaimed the coming of the promised one. The prophecy of Micah designated his birthplace, Micah 5:2. Daniel specified the time of his advent. Daniel 9:25. God had committed these prophecies to the Jewish leaders. Therefore they were without excuse, if they did not know and declare to the people that the Messiah's coming was at hand. Their ignorance was the result of sinful neglect. See chart in the background. What title of God's chosen church, from the Old to the New Covenant, were entrusted the lively oracles given to Moses at Mount Sinai, Acts 7:38, that were handed down to us, wherein the title Seventh-day Adventist Church at present, is the recipient of this lively oracles. That is why in our present generation, the same rule applies, on how SDA pastors and elders who are continually rejecting and ignoring the use of the oracles of God in the preaching of the second message of the gospel, the arrival of God's kingdom of glory, as proclaimed by Revelation 18:1 from the east, are also without excuse, if they did not know and declare to the Advent people, the appointed time of Christ's second coming, as the saving message, already been provided to the 10 virgins, representing the Seventh-day Adventist Church at her present state. Thus by applying the oracles of God entrusted to the SDA Church, is based on how the Scripture interpret itself, line upon line, the witnessing will come directly through the chapter and verse location of the Scripture, in exposing real Bible truths. Christ's two witnesses mentioned in Revelation 11:3-4, and the closing chapter of Revelation 22:18-21 when John closed up the book of the Revelation in 96 AD, are both connected to each other. Today even in social media, there are so many false witnesses from many religious groups, claiming to be Christ's two witnesses, being referred to, in Revelation 11:3-4. That is why by applying the oracles of God in Revelation 11:3-4's symbolic 1-2-60 marking, in line with the chapter and verse location of Revelation 22:18-21 is the exact measurement in prophecy given to John, will distinguish the genuine, from its many counterfeits. Exact measurement in prophecy given to John, pinned on chart the prophetic periods of the last days. When John closed up the book of the Revelation in 96 AD, the exact measurement in prophecy given to John, in the rule of not adding nor subtracting any words from the prophecy of this book, written in Revelation 22:18-21, unlocks a code that duplicates in figure, the exact measurement in prophecy given to the two visionaries who wrote down both dreams and visions, symbols and figures combined, as the two witnessing from the spirit of prophecy, in line with the prophetic periods they are called. Their union are established under one foundation through the name Jesus Christ, line upon line. And also the names of these two visionaries are also identified on chart. The chapter and verse location of Revelation 11:3-4's two witnesses, in line with the chapter and verse location of Ezekiel 33:1-7's duty of a watchman, disclosed on chart the names of the two visionaries in line with the prophetic periods they are called, who were instructed during the days of spiritual Israel, to deliver God's people out of Babylon, Revelation 14:6-12, Revelation 18:1-4, as the final warning message. Babylon means apostate religion. The two witnesses who are instructed to prophesy 1,260 prophetic days that ended in 1798 AD, wherein 1,260 days, and 1798, are both literal and symbolic. The first witness, Ellen G. White, wrote down through historicism on chart, what three significant events transpired in 1798 AD which lies at the end of 1,260 prophetic days, namely 1,260 years. First event, papal supremacy has ended in 1798. Second event, the Book of Daniel has been unsealed in 1798. Third event, the New World or America was rising into power in 1798. The very reason why Ellen G. White was the first witness chosen by God to prophesy on the fulfillment of the end of 1,260 prophetic days, Revelation 11:3, the scriptural verse is found written under her name, that reveal her destiny. While the two olive trees imparted to human instrumentalities, wrote down through historicism on chart, the literal 1,260 days, namely 42 months, are 3.5 years of Gentile domination, Revelation 11:1-2, see chart, as the period that will cover the time of Jacob's trouble, when the beast's wound would be completely healed, Revelation 13:3. Also the two olive trees write down on chart what is meant by the symbolic 1798, whose code, 190, duplicates in figure, the code under the words seal of the living God, Revelation 7:2-3, the fulfillment of Ellen G. White's 1848 Dorchester vision, seal of the living God, that will arise in the East during the time of trouble. The sealing of God's people in the last days are both spiritual and intellectual. The sealing message that began in the eastern part of the United States in 1848 at the start of publishing ministry. It was the third angel's message, Revelation 14:9-12 from the west, assigned to do the task on spiritual sealing of God's people, to separate the wheat from the tares. The separation between the wheat and tares will culminate during the shaking among God's people, Early Writings page 270 paragraphs 2 and 3. While the sealing message that arise from the east, here in the Philippines, began shortly before the time of trouble, and before the end of investigative judgment, when Christ as our high priest will exit through the same east gate that he entered once, Ezekiel 44:1-3, Ezekiel 43:1-2. Note, the two directions within the heavenly sanctuary, in line with the prophecy of Isaiah 59:19, is very significant guide for us to know what prophetic periods of the last days will proclaim the first message and second message of the gospel. The prophet Ezekiel already saw in his vision, the direction from where the glory of the Lord came from the east, as the same direction where the glory of Revelation 18:1 arise, that proclaim the second message of the gospel, the arrival of God's kingdom of glory, Christ's second advent. It was the fourth angel's message, Revelation 18:1 from the east, assigned to do the task on intellectual sealing of God's people, to select the 5 wise virgins from the 10 virgins representing the SDA Church at her present state. The oil from the 2 olive trees to fill the lamps of the 5 wise virgins, Matthew 25:4-10, who are waiting for the bridegroom. How the voices of the 7 thunders was unraveled to Christ's 2 witnesses. The voices of the 7 thunders in Revelation chapter 10's little book of John, was unraveled to Christ's 2 witnesses, who wrote down through historicism on chart, the days that covered Revelation 10:1-6 closed door message in relation to time, as written on chart by Ellen G. White, and the days that covered Revelation 10:7-11 open door message in relation to time, as written on chart by the 2 olive trees imparted to human instrumentalities. It was the key of David given to Christ, as contained inside the Philadelphia 6th church message, Revelation 3:7-8, that pinned on chart, the end of tarrying time in Habakkuk 2:2-3, from closed door to open door message in relation to time. That is why the Philadelphia 6th church message, have united with the Laodicea 7th church period SDA church, on 2 occasions. First, the Philadelphia closed-door message, unite with Laodicea 7th Church SDA Church, in the year 1900, when Ellen G. White wrote down on chart the no definite tracing of prophetic time beyond 1844. Second, the Philadelphia Open Door Message, Unite with Laodicea Seventh Church SDA Church. By year 2002, when the two olive trees wrote down on chart the open door message in relation to time, the fulfillment of John's vision in Revelation 10:8, when he saw the little book was opened. The complete unsealing of the little book, Revelation chapter 10's Voices of the Seven Thunders, arrived last 2002 AD, the start of the last period of probation during the days of the voice of the seventh angel, Revelation 10:7, when the mystery of God should be finished is promised in the Bible. The saving message, that comes through the oil from the two olive trees to fill the lamps of the five wise virgins waiting for the bridegroom, Christ's second coming, has already been provided to the 10 virgins last 2002 AD, to separate the five wise virgins from the five foolish virgins. The state of the church represented by the foolish virgins, is also spoken as the Laodicean state of being lukewarm, and will be spewed out of his mouth, which also implies, out of the remnant church, at the end of the shaking. The union of Philadelphia 6th Church, and Laodicea 7th Church SDA Church, is the qualification of the remnant. Signs of the Times, January 17, 1911. Towards the end of the shaking among God's people, both the tares and the five foolish virgins, will be spewed out of his mouth, which also implies, out of the remnant church. Another conclusive proof, is on how the chapter and verse location of Ezekiel 12:22-25, in line with Habakkuk 2:2-3, in writing down true vision upon tables or charts, at the end of tarrying time, see chart in the background, also identify the names of Christ's two witnesses in Revelation 11:2-3, who were instructed to prophesy 1,260 days. In William Miller's dream, about the casket, that contain all the precious stones and jewels, whose shining glory symbolized the light of the present truth. By solving the puzzle to his dream, on how the total linear dimensions of the casket, in line with the chapter and verse location of the gospel message of the last days, see chart, constitute the light of the present truth, disclosed on chart, the names of God's servants of the last days, who were instructed to prophesy 1,260 days, in Revelation 11:3-4. Beloved, kindly watch this short video insert, that was published on YouTube 4 years ago.
We'll start with the dream of William Miller, about the casket, that contains all the precious stones and jewels, whose shining glory, symbolize the light of the present truth. And also his dream of the man with the dirt brush who come to his aid, when he asked God for help. Here is an account of William Miller's dream as quoted from the Spirit of Prophecy in early writings pages 81-83. I dreamed that God, by an unseen hand, sent me a curiously wrought casket about 10 inches long by 6 square, made of ebony and pearls curiously inlaid. To the casket there was a key attached. I immediately took the key and opened the casket, when to my wonder and surprise, I found it filled with all sorts and sizes of jewels, diamonds, precious stones, and gold and silver coin of every dimension and value, beautifully arranged in their several places in the casket, and thus arranged they reflected a light and glory equaled only to the sun. I thought it was not my duty to enjoy this wonderful sight alone, although my heart was overjoyed at the brilliancy, beauty, and value of its contents. I therefore placed it on a center table in my room and gave out word that all who had a desire might come and see the most glorious and brilliant sight ever seen by man in this life. The people began to come in, at first few in number, but increasing to a crowd. When they first looked into the casket, they would wonder and shout for joy. But when the spectators increased, everyone would begin to trouble the jewels, taking them out of the casket and scattering them on the table. I then saw that among the genuine jewels and coin they had scattered an innumerable quantity of spurious jewels and counterfeit coin. I was highly incensed at their base conduct and ingratitude, and reproved and reproached them for it, but the more I reproved, the more they scattered the spurious jewels and false coin among the genuine. I then became vexed in my physical soul and began to use physical force to push them out of the room, but while I was pushing out one, 3 more would enter and bring in dirt and shavings and sand and all manner of rubbish, until they covered every one of the true jewels, diamonds, and coins, which were all excluded from sight. They also tore in pieces my casket and scattered it among the rubbish. I thought no man regarded my sorrow or my anger. I became wholly discouraged and disheartened, and sat down and wept. While I was thus weeping and mourning for my great loss and accountability, I remembered God, and earnestly prayed that He would send me help. Immediately the door opened, and a man entered the room, when the people all left it. And he, having a dirt brush in his hand, opened the windows, and began to brush the dirt and rubbish from the room. I cried to him to forbear, for there were some precious jewels scattered among the rubbish. He told me to fear not, for he would take care of them. Then, while he brushed the dirt and rubbish, false jewels and counterfeit coin, all rose and went out of the window like a cloud, and the wind carried them away. In the bustle I closed my eyes for a moment. When I opened them, the rubbish was all gone. The precious jewels, the diamonds, the gold and silver coins, lay scattered in profusion all over the room. He then placed in the table a casket, much larger and more beautiful than the former, and gathered up the jewels, the diamonds, the coins, by the handful, and cast them into the casket, till not one was left, although some of the diamonds were not bigger than the point of a pin. He then called upon me to come and see. I looked into the casket, but my eyes were dazzled with the sight. They shone with 10 times their former glory. I thought they had been scoured in the sand by the feet of those wicked persons who had scattered and trod them in the dust. They were arranged in beautiful order in the casket, every one in its place, without any visible pains of the man who cast them in. I shouted with very joy, and that shout awoke me. Brethren, Mrs. Ellen G. White has pointed out clearly in Early Writings page 48 paragraph 2, that the man with the dirt brush, as the second Miller in William Miller's dream, is one of God's messengers who will arise in the last days, during the loud cry from the east, latter rain that falls in eastern lands. Early Writings pages 49 to 50. The second Miller, as the man with the dirt brush in William Miller's dream who come to his aid, is the one who have solved the puzzle to William Miller's dream about the casket, to be explained towards the end of this video. To make it clear, he is not a member of any Seventh-day Adventist Reform Movement church claiming that the man with the dirt brush arise from their own ranks. But the actual calling of the man with the dirt brush comes from within the walls of the SDA church. The role of the man with the dirt brush who comes to the aid of William Miller in his dream, is the proclamation of the saving message, that comes through the oil from the 2 olive trees, supposed to fill the lamps of the 10 virgins, the SDA church at her present state, while waiting for the arrival of the bridegroom. Testimonies to Ministers, page 397 paragraph 1. The unfinished work by William Miller who suffered persecution during his time, after the Great Disappointment in 1844, will soon be rescued by the second Miller as the man with the dirt brush who come to his aid, when another light is yet to shine upon them, in the propagation of the saving message. See Early Writings page 235 paragraph 1. This another light refers to the glory of Revelation 18:1 from the east, Philippines, that will accomplish the proclamation of the saving message to fill the lamps of the 5 wise virgins, as foresaw by Mrs. Ellen G. White. See Manuscript Releases Volume 16 page 270 paragraph 1. The only difference between the first Miller and the second Miller as the man with the dirt brush is this one. William Miller lived during the time when the little book of John, as the message in relation to time, has not yet been unsealed, as the days that covered Revelation chapter 10 verses 1 to 6. While the second Miller, as the man with the dirt brush in William Miller's dream who come to his aid, has come to live during the days of Revelation 10:7 in our present generation, when the mystery of God should be finished as promised in the Bible, by the time when John's vision on the unsealing of the little book, Revelation 10:8 has already come to pass. Was William Miller's destiny predicted in the Bible? William Miller was a former Baptist minister who launched an intensive study about investigative judgment in behalf of Daniel 8:14's end of 2,300 days. He headed a group known as the Millerites movement in the 18th century. His computation that the Jewish reckoning of the Day of Atonement in Leviticus 23:27 coincided with the reckoning that was in Daniel 8:14, that would fall on October 22, 1844. However, he regarded it as the event of the cleansing of the earthly sanctuary, which turned out to be known in history as the Great Disappointment in 1844, when Christ's second coming as what he expected did not occur on the said date. Miller's computation of the prophetic period is accurate, as what is predestined under his name, as disclosed by the code under his name. See chart in the background. The scriptural verse that is written in William Miller's name is Daniel 8:14, and he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. That is why he was chosen by God to interpret the said 2,300 days reckoning in Daniel 8:14. However, his only mistake is that what occurred in the year 1844 was not the expected Christ's second coming on earth, but it was the time when Christ entered the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary, the great original that was in heaven. Hebrews 9:11-12. To start his ministry as our high priest, the start of investigative judgment in the second apartment of the sanctuary in heaven as proclaimed in Daniel 8:14. We now proceed to the interpretation of William Miller's dream about the casket. By the two olive trees, as the man with the dirt brush. The light that's shining out from the precious stones and jewels that were once inside the casket, soon faded out after many people came in and out of the room by spoiling all the jewels until they are all covered with dirt and stains. William Miller in his dream was so overwhelmed with grief and sorrow, and he became wholly discouraged and disheartened, and sat down and wept. He earnestly prayed, hoping that God would send him help. The man with the dirt brush was later sent to his aid, to do the clean up. And after the cleaning was done by the man with the dirt brush, when all the counterfeit jewels and dirt has been thrown out of the room, while the genuine jewels and precious stones were put back in order into the casket, are now shining 10 times its former glory. William Miller then shouted with joy, and that shout awoke him. By solving the puzzle to William Miller's dream about the casket. Early Writings, page 81, paragraph 2, disclosed on chart, the two witnesses of the last days who are instructed to prophesy 1-60 days, Revelation 11:3-4, as the two anointed ones being referred to in Zechariah 4:14, who received the two witnessing from the spirit of prophecy, both dreams and visions, symbols and figures combined, by writing down on chart what is meant by the light of the present truth through the gospel. See chart in the background. The light of the present truth that comes from the Heavenly Father constitutes the three angels' messages, Revelation 14:6-12 from the west, followed by Revelation 18:1 from the east, that unites at the end of it. As the end draws near and the work of giving the last warning to the world extends, it becomes more important for those who accept present truth to have a clear understanding of the nature and influence of the testimonies, which God in His providence has linked with the work of the third angel's message from its very rise. Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, page 654. That is why the work of another angel in Revelation 18:1 from the east that unites with the three angels' messages, Revelation 14:6-12 from the west, constitutes the light of the present truth through the gospel. The two messages of the gospel, namely God's kingdom of grace as proclaimed by the third angel's message from the west, and God's kingdom of glory as proclaimed by the fourth angel's message, Revelation 18:1 from the east, unites during the days of the voice of the seventh angel, Revelation 10:7. Their union will swell into a loud cry, is what is meant by the climax in William Miller's dream, when he shouted with joy that awoke him.
The oracles of God in Revelation chapter 11, as drawn on charts. Concerning the two witnesses, the prophet declares further, these are the two olive trees, and the two candlesticks standing before the God of the earth. The two witnesses represent the scriptures of the Old and the New Testament. Both are important testimonies to the origin and perpetuity of the law of God. Both are witnesses also to the plan of salvation. They shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. During the greater part of this period, God's witnesses remained in a state of obscurity. Then the faithful witnesses prophesied in sackcloth. Yet they continued their testimony throughout the entire period of 1,260 years. To these loyal servants were given wisdom, power, and authority to declare His truth during the whole of this time. When they shall have finished, or finishing, their testimony. The period when the two witnesses were to prophesy clothed in sackcloth ended in 1798. As they were approaching the termination of their work in obscurity, war was to be made upon them, by the power represented as the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit. Beforehand, the next covenant nation chosen by God next to physical Israel, is the United States of America, as pinned on chart, from where the first witness Ellen G. White was called forth, endowed with the testimony of Jesus as the spirit of prophecy, Revelation 19:10, who received dreams and visions, as the medium of prophecy under the third angel's message from the west. The second witness, the two olive trees imparted to human instrumentalities, who received symbols and figures, as the medium of prophecy under the fourth angel's message, Revelation 18:1 from the east, here in the Philippines, as also pinned on chart. The second witness was called forth to prophesy regarding the forthcoming literal 1,260 days, namely 42 months of Gentile domination, Revelation 11:1-2, as the same 3.5 years period that would cover the time of Jacob's trouble, Revelation 11:9, by the time when the second beast, USA, would transform herself to give life unto the image of the beast, Revelation 13:11-17. This two covenant nations from where the two witnesses in line with the prophetic periods they are called, under the third and the fourth angel's messages, unite during the days of the voice of the seventh angel, Revelation 10:7, as pinned on chart, that arrived last 2002 AD, the last period of probation ever granted to mankind. While the two candlesticks symbolize the union of Philadelphia 6th Church and Laodicea 7th Church SDA Church, that constitutes the remnant. The 65 of God's plan, versus the 65 snares of Satan. As Mrs. White warned the SDA Church about the Omega of apostasy, that will come next to the Alpha of apostasy that shook the early church, so does the two olive trees issue the same warning. Through the 65 of God's plan, that will counteract and expose what is meant by the 65 snares of Satan, as the link in between the spirit of error, line upon line, and Antichrist, line upon line. As the inner core behind the Omega apostasy of the last days, disguised under the cloak of ecumenical alliance, forewarned by Mrs. White as the union through a dragonic bond, the existing union of different denominations to oppose the present truth, manifesting hatred and bitterness against the remnant, who keep the commandments of God. It's like a Trojan horse being offered as a gift from the adversary, hidden inside it, the 65 snares of Satan, being planted within the walls of the SDAGC. Brethren, kindly reject this gift from the outside, and do not compromise with it. Brethren, you may watch this video uploaded on YouTube 4 years ago, with the said title, The Trojan Horse That Was Planted Within the Walls of God's Chosen Church. The first fulfillment of Revelation 11:7-10. Here's an account from the Spirit of Prophecy by Mrs. White. As the 1,260 years of papal supremacy were ending, which took effect in 1798 AD, the symbolism used here indicates an attack would be made upon the Holy Bible. The beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit, Revelation 11:7, represent atheistic France, during the French Revolution, was to be victorious over Christ's two witnesses for a short period of time. Where was this vision to meet its fulfillment? It was to be in a place which could appropriately be represented by Sodom and Egypt. Revelation 11:8. Sodom represents the depths of moral degradation. Egypt, in Exodus 5:2, as a symbol of atheism and opposition to God. The country of France rose in rebellion against God, and by law established fornication. The Lord was crucified, Revelation 11:8, in the person of his martyred saints. Revelation 11:9's 3 days and a half, refers to the 3.5 year period of time, when Christian religion was abolished in France by a decree. It was on November 26, 1793, at the Council of the Commune at Paris, that all worship, save that of reason, was prohibited. The Festival of the Goddess of Reason, in Paris in 1793. The cult of reason. During this time churches were closed and Bibles were burned in the streets. The government also denounced and arrested clergy who resisted the movement of dechristianization, a period of atheistic France. Restrictions were not removed until June 17, 1797, the fulfillment of Revelation 11:11. And after 3 days and a half the Spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them, which saw them. God's faithful witnesses, slain by the blasphemous power, that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit, were not long to remain silent. After 3.5 years, a resolution resigning these decrees, thus granting toleration to the scriptures, was adopted by the same body, The Triumph of God's Love, page 169. The coming second fulfillment of Revelation 11:9's 3.5 prophetic days period, namely 3.5 years, as drawn through historicism on chart by the two olive trees. The events connected with the 3.5 years of atheistic France, before the end of 1798 AD, when papal supremacy ended, Revelation 11:7-10. Shall also befall the United States of America, as the second beast, Revelation 13:11-17, next to the first beast, are papal Rome. There are harbingers, few months before the start of the 3.5 years of Gentile domination, that would cover the time of Jacob's trouble inside USA. The wildfire that consumed a great part of Los Angeles is not just an ordinary catastrophe. The flames that destroy homes, forests, and even lives are fueled by inexplicable unseen forces beyond natural, as experienced by firefighters who attempted to extinguish the unquenchable flames.
All right, cast and crew are leading the way with 11 mentions. Moms are holding strong with 3 shout-outs. God, creator of the universe, 0 mentions. All right. No surprise in this godless town.
The events connected with the close of probation, and the work of preparation for the time of trouble, are clearly presented. But multitudes have no more understanding of these important truths, than if they had never been revealed. Satan watches to catch away every impression that would make them wise unto salvation, and the time of trouble will find them unready. The Great Controversy, page 594, paragraph 1.
Kindly please do not forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. God bless us all.